So, good afternoon. I'm Giovanni Singleton, Lunch Poems Coordinator. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. And this is Lunch Poems' 21st season, so we're legal. First, I'd like to invite you all to sign up sign up for our mailing list, which is at the librarian's desk. And we also have posters with this year's featured readers. Also on our website, lunchpoems.berkeley.edu. You can view this reading and all of our past readings on YouTube, where we have our very own channel. We're so special. So poetry, 24 hours a day. Please come back next month on December 1st, where we will host the current U.S. Poet Laureate, Juan Felipe Herrera. So do come back and check that out as well. Now, please help me welcome our incoming Director of Lunch Poems, English Professor Jeffrey G. O'Brien, who will introduce this afternoon's esteemed reader. Thank you.
Incoming sounds too much like a missile. I'm just here. Thank you for coming to experience this gentle eruption of poetry in the middle of the quotidian. I'm really happy to have Carmen Giménez Smith here. We were actually classmates at Iowa far too long ago. I haven't seen you for 12 years, 10 years? Just a couple of facts about what Carmen's done in that intervening time. She's the author of 4 books of poetry, and several more on the way, but the ones that are already out in the world are Milk and Filth, Goodbye Flicker, The City She Was, and Odalisque in Pieces. I could probably say a great deal about Carmen's poetry just off of those 4 title choices, but I won't. I'll leave you to wonder what I would have said about that. She also is the author of a memoir called Bring Down the Little Birds on Mothering, Art, Work, and Everything Else. And that is something I want to speak about in Carmen's work, that whatever it explicitly seems to be about, it's also always about several other things and then about everything else as well. So she teaches at New Mexico State, and she's also the editor-in-chief of New Emmy Press, so she does things for poetry beyond her own poems in several ways. But to go back to that everything else, let me start by briefly summarizing something I really value in the late poet and critic Alan Grossman's theory of poetry. He thinks of poetry as basically being, in large part, a conservation of personhood. Perhaps because person gets figured and imaged in the place where persons can't be hurt, exactly, in that immaterial place of the page. And along the way, in the history of poetry, things happen to that conserved image of the person. It stops being only a white male face or image and starts to ramify, and possibilities for multiple kinds of personhood start to be available there. And that also led him to this other idea called representational equity, in that there's actually a certain finite amount of representational space, and it would be good if it were inhabited in a pretty fair, egalitarian way by all the things and persons that deserve representation. I say this because Carmen's poetry has often been talked about in terms of its desire to make representational room for female and female-identified experience, for Latinx experience. And I think that's true. I think it's a serious commitment of Carmen's. But it's only one commitment among many. She's very interested in the everything else, even if sometimes that everything else is going to be run through the aperture of particular features of a particular person. So that although she's a fiercely political poet, to read her primarily or only in that way and through identity would, I think, be an incredibly arid reading, a really reductive reading of all of her lyrical impulses and the social commitments that drive that lyric. I want to just quote 3 little moments from 3 separate poems, because I think they're places where we can hear political meditation, but also hear something else, the everything else that runs through or around that political meditation. It's from a poem about her daughter, just the simple and single line, harm on her, harm on us all. And I think you can see right there already a single aperture, an individual, through which everybody is at stake. Or, I've got so much blood to give inside and outside of any milieu. Even for a bad zoning decision, I'll bleed so much you'll be bleeding, all of us bleeding in and out like it's breathing or kissing, and because it is righteous and terrible and red. And then one last, if I were a bug, were I, then you'd hope for reparation and paint more brown into the plot. So yes, paint more brown into the plot feels like a bid for representational equity in a way, but I also hear there just the repetition of were, or in the other excerpt I just read, bleeding, 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 until it sounds like breathing and is inside and outside of any milieu, political, social, physical. Or even the repetition in the first thing I read, harm on her, harm on us all. Carmen is a poet of fierce repetition, and that's part of her political thinking, but it's actually her poetic thinking, of which her politics is only a part, and we will hear all of it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today and to be reading here at Berkeley and to see my friends old and dear. I got some very exciting news this week, and I'm going to, and on account of that reading, that kind of that news, it kind of shaped what I'm going to be reading. But first, before I get neurotic about time, let me set the clock. Okay. This week I heard that Grey Wolf will be publishing a book I wrote called Post Identity, and so I'm going to read from that collection to begin with, and then see how I do with time at the end. The book Post Identity, as Jeffrey pointed out, I am a very fiercely political poet. It's a big part. I think I feel, especially staring down this brutal election, that I don't have a choice but to be political. I think being a parent has made me very radical in my politics. One of the deep interrogations that I've done in my work has been centered around, as Jeffrey also mentioned, about representation and the lyric voice's ability to express that work. And a poem that I've been working on, it's a long poem, it's 51 pages, I'm not going to read it all today, is an investigation of the lyrics' political potency, as well as an investigation into the work of the spoken word poets, of the Nuyorican poets in New York, who were a very early vanguard movement that I think gets to get overlooked as a vanguard movement, but I think their work has a great deal of legitimacy in terms of the political vanguard of the United States. So this long poem also has a lot of questions. There is a lot of repetition. And I at one point, in one of the poems, I mentioned that there's a little subtitle that's after Pietri. I'm referring to Pedro Pietri's, the poem is Puerto Rican Obituary. And so the poem that I'm going to be reading is a take on that poem. So the reading of this, I'm just going to read a few sections of it. Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, I'm too close. Okay, thank you. The reading of this is about, I think, 12 minutes. I think that's all I have. So let me no, I'm joking. Okay, it's called Be Recorder. Be Recorder. Yes, Virginia, there's a monolith no one else sees, though it overshadows the animals in their boxes, stacked so corners of one stick into corners of others. For morale, the animals think about a next life or uprising, while the monolith tells them they created reality's Molotov cocktail with Cool Whip instead of sharing the proverbial bounty. So you should worry about the future, Virginia, and let you take precedence over shadow, since there's also the dearth, the secret to being the 1/12th spot taken by a much more legitimate, therefore ephemeral and necessary revolution that we await, which is why our shoes pinch made elsewhere in plastic versions regions of animal skin, layers of animal cells, and the microscopic phrase of thread meant to stitch shoes, instead stitching the lungs, the fingers, to the stitches to thousandths of cents, the kind of money to transform us all each day into new animals, new pelts. How I acquired this most ancient onus. Can you see onus and me twisting into each other like vines? How do I break free of odium, Virginia, or explain it as my current millstone? And what of the slumbering beast on the other side of the door and his agenda for me, like fill this hole and shut up? And why the performance of competence that feels like gauntlet because the scheme wasn't visible, the one from which my hand was molded by my betters? Stop thinking in the past, they say. It's like shitting on the giant progressive tapestry of us, says their censorious voiceover. And that really brings us all down. Emphasis theirs. You should know about these matters. That's what they say, Virginia. They have a straight face when they say it. In the legion of animals, the serpent is the queen, and the elephant the serf. The microbe is the god, and the human animal is that god's prey. The factory is apex maw, the grid its enforcer. Father is both axle and rude, mother as dollar, dollar bills, molten core of real. The animal imagines what life is in her fiefdom, what the edges of her domain are, what parables become policy. Vice versa, the animal susses out confederate from the horde. The animal defines the age's pathology. How will the animal cure it? How does the animal describe worry? And recognizing, how does the animal solve the animal outside of time? Does invulnerability become the animal or serve the fiefdom? What is the give and the takeaway? Is it enumerative, magnitude, inescapable class, fortress? We all did grow up frozen at that slant. Are we up or down? Are we over and out? Can we clamber in from the wilds? What is your provenance? What did you suffer? What is your affiliation? How are you acquainted with industry? What will you bring to our guild? What are the qualities of a good serf? What is your mission in life? And could you sell me this instance? What is the last pornography that engaged you? Can you talk about your research into the unsolvable? How would you feign a diverse audience? Is a reader a client? Did customers occur to you as an outcome? What are 3 positive strains in you? Does discontent drive you into the market? Does blunder drive you to work on a regular basis? When can you start with selective memory? Is this the racket you had planned? Was this a natal force? Are you an open boomtown or a crafted urn? What animal rules the roost? Does that animal work as aphorism, pure revelation, or dispatch from the front lines? Where is the monolith's fortress and benefactor? Have you made anything good with our outrage or built an endless war? Is it merely an illusion, all-purpose effort against absolutes? Will an underclass's hunger qualify for your attention? Or will you have to track down their legitimacy yourself? Can I guarantee a chronicle of the moment, or is it fraught with the 70s, therefore fraught with the vulgar density of self? Is that the hitch aesthetically, thus ethically? Does it seem insurmountable, the desire for such validation? Or could you break free and record, be recorder? I was light from the mouth, from every part of me. I was of the earth, or a scar in the earth rent through the ruins of late civilization, and foam rose from it and became a saint's reptilian spirit, and I could taste the wheat and coal and gold like a trinity of bounty, and I was vapor like a smog that becomes a wraith over the city, then back to its animal form, decompressed and atomized into its past life as star. And I was that animal truth, the spirit I had dreamt about being more cloud and star than given. I was just edges, the density of water, a system of reciprocity, in and out, the fade of loss, fugitive sustenance going south, and inside the disposition for supernaturalist decadence that disappears in the annals, yet leaves a taste in the mouth, metallic and lime, the sense of dissolution. And I was speed and insistence to reset the orb center of gravity. I was risen from foam, necessitated by colony, sired in violence, exported as luxury. Are my fingers comb, my eyes pools of quicksand? Are my breasts origin? Is my mouth portal? Is the freckle on my nose the dimmest grief? Is the left ear moment and the right one perpetuity? Is each fingertip war, each wrinkle a row with a friend, each vein a filament, the elbow crook a verdict? Are my taste buds tiny turrets, and are the drums in my ears awaiting your report? Is my body any currency worth trading? Do I bear the hue of my indignities? Am I a dome of resistance? Anything on me to suggest virtue? Are all the marks and scars just a reportage? I'd once have left Brown behind, having already left the tribe behind and her tongue and the garb that made me theirs, because it felt like leaving hoi polloi behind, to put behind the chola in my mother's tongue, lingering in long and deep vowels, meant I could leave behind inferiority complex, not really, but in theory. I try to leave my Eden dreams behind, but they stick to my shoe. I leave behind dignity 5 minutes in because of my anarchic spirit, so the worm is behind me too, along with the poison pen. Never mind, I'll need that. I had long imagined anger as my primary breathing apparatus. What a mixed blessing when it finally worked. Once I broke into pieces, now I break into wholes, since I've learned the most from the cracked. Even the larks we go on, like the egress via the dour pilgrim's burlap sack that swung us into the heavens, then launched us into the river. There was such a taste of afterlife from the spell of fireworks on that enchanting Independence Day. When might my audience discover the true self covered in terminal fur? When will my audience draw and quarter my portrayal, banish me from their orgies? Why am I the funny sister, the bad one in limbo? After Pietri. They work their fingers to the soul, their bones to their marrow. They toil in blackness in the dead yellow rectangle of warehouse windows, work fingers to tit, the young, the boneless. The warehouse do too to the bone of the good bones of the building, every splinter spoken for. She works to the centrifuge of time, the calendar a thorn into the sole dollar of working without pause, work their mortal coils into frayed threads until just tatter. They worked their bones to the soul until there was no soul left to send, worked until they were dead, gone to heaven or back home. For the dream to have USA without USA, to export USA to the parts under the leather sole of the owner. They work in dreams of working under less than ideal conditions instead of just plain not ideal conditions. Work for the shrinking pension and never dental, for the illusion of the doctor medicating them for work-related disease until they die, leaving no empire, only more work, so that the children should work less, though working more for less, for them and their kin. They work dead and never alive, balloon payment in the future. If only that'll be me someday, the hopeless sinner said on the 13th of never, hollering in the echo chamber of perpetual time. 4 bankruptcies later, 3/5 into a life that she had planned on expecting happiness in any form it took, not excluding the knockoff cubed life she lived in debt, working to the millionth of the cent. Her body cost the machine's owner, Yolanda, Berta, Zoila, Chabela, Lucia Esperanza, once worked here, their work disappearing into dream-emptied pockets into the landfill of work. Does this new glitch accumulate volition and mass humanist hysteria? Or can it be vaccinated against the dominion goal of one population in relation to many others, some system instead of fractures clouded by gunsmoke and dark forces deserving of the lead in their own water because of the 7 sins used as the shackles against the wrong caste? When is the mamacita of all ad hoc meetings on the subject of identity being held closed session by the elite? Who will send a memo, or should I fly to New York on my own dime or on my articulate diction and ability to take direction? Will I have to march right on into the boardroom, and will it be a disturbance of the meritocracy? Then in the account, why will the depiction bear a resemblance to the verity of the anti-animal? Will mapping begin to cohere for the myopic when an encroachment triggers that red state type sweating bullets Because truthfully, we smear the map with pungency. You want to swab us, you can't, thus making it harder, more terrifying to efface. We coagulate and compound virulent, fetid, a stream bisecting dreams where those who aren't there, old phantoms. Phantoms in the pantry and from the pylon and hiding in the cricks of history, or Arnold's Phantom of Yourself, the West Side Story phantom and the phantom of pencils gone, the phantom of long-lost moods dense with speechlessness, the phantoms of squashed ants and the off-course cricket's dirge, phantom dream trapped in your pillow, the despair of these phantoms squared into bigger phantom, the phantom of a fat plume and her narcotic intentions, splatter of phantoms against the spray. Their shadows above your bed, the phantom of sawdust, the phantom of streaks in the window, phantom of that recollection, Aragon's abstract phantom, phantom sister, why hast thou split into a cavalcade of phantoms? For thou ist purest idiom in my arsenal phantom, infection of clotting history with conspiracy, tattered or sentient phantom revenge, the phantom of insistent living there in the bedroom and again in the kitchen, the master phantom in the semantic root, the body's fleshy ghost. And how did trifling bureaucracies lodge such a vast root in me? I forget my real vocation, not executive, not supplicant, like stepping back into daughterhood, rehearsing defiance to empty rooms, the black ball of the master's discontent regaining consciousness inside of a bullet. Why can't you say it? Why can't you release yourself into it? Why won't you open yourself to the wound? Because imagine it's like a rose, a blossom of scarred red tissue, not beautiful, but arresting layers and layers of lesions layered over with more scar than more wound over it, and the edges are brittle from years and years of wounding. Can you see it? Red, white, purple, orange, yellow, milk, tears, blue, black, the colors of everywhere. So why can't we just let ourselves circle the wound? All of us circle it with balms and prayer, with linked hands around it, a common song, Esperanto, for instance, the resurgence of Babel, but is one braided bellow like the rope that leads to heaven, exciting the wound, which could vibrate and diminish into lesser scar, a release like opening a fist of morning glory, but of broken skin like a giant fractal spreading across the ice. It would be the end of one era, the beginning of another, like the end of money or the end of time, except more difficult, some might say impossible. Except we would do it perhaps even televised, no commercial breaks. We are taking off the masks, and once they're off, we'll be in the chairs we dreamt of when we thought about this insurrection. The chair might have been your aunt's or your father's, and we apologize for the disruption of lineage. But from where I sit, I see the seas or a looking glass through which I find my sisters and my brothers, and their force is ceaseless and filled with light. You go first, then I'll follow. You say it and I'll repeat it, and you will repeat it, and yours and mine and ours will repeat it, and it'll become the human drone over the world that trembles out the clouds, tumbles them to wash over the cities, wash out our mouths, the consonants of draining out into the sewers of our historical consciousness, and the new city rises from the bits of what was the letters are shaped like this. Liberate me. My belly triggers memories of the living and the dead. My belly is good as an armrest for texting. I like my belly because all female bodies are intoxicating terrains. My belly, a waterbed for your paternal head. My daughter pushes into my belly button because that's where we are connected. My belly's post-capitalist gurgles. I stroke it at night. I made this, I whisper. My belly sets rooms on fire rhetorically. I like my belly because it is my belly, not quite new a thing. I said, kiss that belly because that belly will change your life. I inhabit the forest of my belly like an endangered and spotted owl. I hop into a stream, never the same one. I build a fire from the aphorisms from the cherry tree spouting from my belly button. A belly never stops being beautiful, but my belly stopped being prey in the tens. Alleluia, belly. I love my belly because the insides are all scarred up from living fast. The scars in my belly are workdays and blowing winds and figurative cannibalism. So luxe, my belly. I can think of about 5 non-related people I would let lick my belly all over. My belly is not political resistance, alas. This belly of one woman acts olive undulations of grain. The fluidity of my belly's size is an assertion of my absolute powers. It's a foxy, round, brown belly. If I could write poems using only my belly, my life would be a different story. I have what feels like my Bay Area poems, being a Bay Area native, although not living here for 14 years. One of them is, I write a lot about my brother in these next couple of books, and he's sort of a world traveler, so he couldn't be here today, but I am still going to read this. My brother is a savior. My brother is a savior who can torpedo through privilege with an artistic stun gun. He's a tempest saturating the city. He saws a scar into the earth, draws out an admixture of folklore and animus plus a pinch of worry from our adolescent miseries, so he can build endless self-perpetuation, literally with big red bricks. This he does with our so-called inheritance. We once walked around our father's force field, looking in like the matchstick children. We walked the edges of our houses to find a warm window. Was it there? It wasn't. The self-preservation, that hunger and fear made me a bewitching hybrid of broken coat trees and orbiting guile and flung doors, king doctrine, maybe that elemental cultivation of fading into the wallpaper. The instability was the brutal grief of one tornado while we searched for succor to know its transport. We're still looking plush with hunger. My brother speaks the cloud's patois, a hushed medium that loosens the grip we all wear on the surface of his planet so that we float over the desert released. More tenderness might have made us better, failure without the sting, less of that grinding down. I said everything silver-tongued. I walked far away. I left my brother behind. This is a poem for my husband. Vow Renewal. I was afraid for our little nuclear family, since we is a delicate tentacled organism stretching 1,000 light years, a vortex, an oil spill Titanic, and also the bobbing 4-person submarine navigating at the size of an atom. Once I feared you'd burn through me with your eyes wet mouth, so I held you at arm's length. The strategy, my anxiety, your endurance. Something like that is this marriage. Anger in woman is not a negative emotion you taught me when I was trying to implode my heart against the flint of your body. My cock got hard when you said that. I'd been waiting for you since before electrons, so I let we become a polysymbiotic life form that eludes eternity, but also occupies us with the rank stink we make of our marital bed sloped by our frangible little crafts. Here's to another 100 years, my love, then to the subsequent upload onto the same big network. I'm just going to read a couple from Milk and Filth. Trigger warning. My drag is a kind of elevator. It's like a tidal. You're soaking in it. It's a courtesy chain mail for your protection. I start my stories with it, and when I'm hungry, it opens the door. The door is pop-up window into my soul, deep and meditative, a vertigo of soul. My cruel, divisive temperament, my cross to bear. We all bear it because of our shared ancestry of milk and filth. Rosy complexion. spasms, deliriums. Madness is such a female world, but that's just my take. Failing often and long at it, I do claim to know girls are there for blame. You too can be matter, purplish and pale, the universe's chasm. I noticed you when you got lustier by calling down a blood spell. Cleanliness is only necessary in hospitals, is what I teach my daughter. She will be filthy. I am plain. I was plain. I will be plain. I'm not, though. My bad habits are secrets, the mention of secrets, going to the last chapter first. I do nothing with my urges because they are manufactured urges. This book, The City She Was, is in many ways, I'm just going to read two from here to end, is in many ways like a Valentine to San Francisco, which is such an enthralling and now impossible to live in place. I think I'd have to win. It's my lottery. If I win the lottery, I'll be back here. But otherwise, probably not. Bridge Abstraction. Not just a surface, embedded horizontals, the 6-stroke face. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a dwindling black, high tide opened and entered, glass blue. Vermilion hot, then white, turned over. The mirror is shut. No mirrors. What we know hasn't got a body. The curved sky is always a road between us. 5:30, the slack chrome tripwire. Ochre blocks recede the wall. The red slit down the left. Difficult to say which is the sun. Rival. I came to know my rival's name when it got posted on the billboard across the street. I saw them come and take down the old one, pasting up my rival's golden hair first. Each tendril was as thick as my wrist, 4 or 5 shades of yellow in the picture. I couldn't see her left ear with all that hair, but an earring, a ruby. We live in a windy city, so they could barely tame her face. One man held one corner and pinned it back. The other man pulled his end tight while this went down. He patted her rouged cheek. It was just the face and not the body. Her mouth was big as a lifeboat, like she could save us. Her giant eyes followed me like the Mona Lisa. I stared long to see if I could know her, so much I came to know her story. Then we were connected. It was spiritual. We began to look alike, her face is mine. I adopted her remote and pristine mannerism. Eventually, I wrote to tell her about the goings-on outside my window. Since I had her audience, I also told her about my grief collection. I felt like I could tell her anything, and I did. I began at the beginning, spelling out for her the twists and turns of my exile. I told her that I called myself Rapunzel after our long hair. I took pictures of her from every angle so she could see what I could see. The letter took me months, and meanwhile her face disintegrated with the weather, bits and pieces of my Dorian gray. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Courtesy of Mo's Books and Owen, we have some books of Carmen's over there, so please go look at them, and I think Carmen would be happy to sign them and continue to explain the world to you. And come back December 1st for Juan Felipe Herrera. Thank you.